Good evening, friends. I welcome you all to the Hindu and the Businessline editorial analysis on June 6th, 2022. I am going to discuss different perspective topics from Hindu and the Businessline. Some are related to the politics, some are related to geopolitics, and some are related to the vaccination, and some are related to the union government's performance, and some are related to the stock market. Some are related to the climate. Friends, the first editorial which I am going to discuss is from the Hindu. It is titled Message from Voters. What is this editorial all about? It discusses the recent by-elections being conducted in Uttarakhand, Kerala and Odisha. Two widows were standing for the election, and two widows have come victorious. One is from Trikakara constituency in Kerala, and another is from Brajraj constituency in Odisha. The Uttarakhand by-election has seen Dami being elected as an MLA. Dami is the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand. The election faced the save the face for the party as well as the candidate. In Trikakara constituency, the Congress was vying for a respectable stand in the state, and it got it. And in Brajraj Nagar constituency in Odisha, the Biju Janata Dal candidate won the elections, and in the seat which was adorned by the candidate's husband. So two widows have emerged as winners in this by-elections conducted recently. Friends, one main important point arises from the article is that the voters have exercised their franchisee in a very different manner. Probably in Trikakara constituency we can see that the voters have expressed their angst over the Silver Line project of the recent LDF government. In Brajraj Nagar constituency, the candidate won was from Biju Janata Dal, and it reinforces the stand of the Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik. Naveen Patnaik is slated to be the longest serving Chief Minister in India in 2024, and that is when the next Orissa elections are. Friends, the next article I am going to take up is Boost for Boosters. This article deals with the booster doses being provided to the Indians above 18 years of age as of now. The article says that there are two approaches to booster dose vaccination. One is homologous, and the next is heterologous booster vaccination. What is homologous booster vaccination, my dear friends? Suppose you have received the first doses of vaccination from Covishield. You will be provided only Covishield as the booster dose in homologous vaccination program. In heterologous vaccination program, booster dose vaccination program, you will be provided with Corbevax. The clinical trials with regard to using Corbevax as a booster dose for either Covishield or Covaxin has been completed. After the third clinical trial, National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization is about to approve the Corbevax as the booster dose vaccine for those who have taken Covishield or Covaxin. This is heterologous vaccination, my dear friends. Heterologous means, suppose you have been vaccinated with Covaxin, you will be provided with a booster dose vaccination of Corbevax. So, Corbevax is not similar to Covaxin. Hence, the term hetero. The next article to be discussed is IPF holds promise but with perils. What does this mean? Recently, United States-led Indo-Pacific Forum has come out with a international Indo-Pacific trade group named Indo-Pacific Economic Forum for Prosperity. This is US led and some countries are members to it. Recently, Brunei has joined. India, Indonesia, New Zealand, Australia, Brunei are already the members of Indo-Pacific Economic. This IEPF, that is IPEF, that is Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, which is US led, shows that US is again tilting its head towards the Indo-Pacific region to counter China. The Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region cannot be ruled out. Most of the Indo-Pacific countries are the members. Brunei has recently joined as a member of the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum framework. The article deals with the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. What is this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, my dear friends? This framework is aiming at removing the trade barriers and providing greater communication between the member countries. The data communication is very much necessary for the supply chain resilience. Supply chain resilience means we can understand from the situation of US when the COVID closed down the Malaysia and in the semiconductor demand, the US was not having any kind of prior information with regard to Malaysia's closure. So the US supply chain had suffered. Indo-Pacific Economic Framework aims at bringing fair trade and data communication. Then the tax laws, the anti-bribery laws. The clean energy decarbonization is another objective of this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. My dear friends, the US government is just extending its tentacles around the Indo-Pacific region. Earlier, the Trump administration had withdrawn from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Obama administration had formed. Friends, there are some questions with regard to this Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is what this article explains about. The main important thing which is going to India is going to face is with regard to the fair trade practices being imposed by the framework. Though intellectual property rights are kept away from the agreement, the fair trade ensures the US is going to impose lots of restrictions on trade. The trade barriers are in the form of customs tariffs. Most of the countries are against the customs tariffs being imposed. So US will see to it that customs tariffs are eased to US's interests. Then another thing is that the labor laws. The US is aiming to enforce stringent labor laws, labor standards for the trade partners. So it will be very much difficult for India to cope up with this labor standards because India is always allowing the Indian workers to choose their own path for being engaged in work. But when the labor standards are going to be enforced, it will be very much stringent for Indian laborers to take this because it ensures that the bindings they have to remain within certain bindings which are not favorable. Another important aspect which US is going to enforce on its partners is that the UN conference on climate change, that is UN conference on climate change had wanted no kinds of restrictions must be imposed on the member countries. The US had been opposed in WTO, that is World Trade Organization, on the labor standards being imposed by US. These two contentious issues, these two argumentative issues at the WTO regarding the labor standards and the climate change on United Nations Conference on Climate Change, the US is going to overturn through fair trade practices being imposed. The IPR is being kept out of this Indo-Pacific economic framework because the most of the countries are yet to have, the developing countries are yet to vaccinate its people. If the IPR laws are kept at a very much stringent norm in this Indo-Pacific economic framework, it will not be possible for vaccinate much. And another aim of this IPEF is the supply chain resilience. US wants most of the US companies to move out of China and locate in other Indo-Pacific regions. This is very much impossible, my dear friends, because the relocating the manufacturing hub from out of China would then endanger the companies which are presently operating, the US companies which are presently. The next issue which is going to come up is that the data portability and data localization. India has rules opposing data localization and data portability. India has been very much stringent since 2019 so that data doesn't move out of. Since 2019, India has imposed severe restrictions on data flows outside India. Recently, the VPN has been restricted, and most of the VPN owners have to maintain the details of the users, VPN users. VPN is the private network which allows the access to the internet. The next article is titled Modenomics and the Long Road to Finish Line. In this, Subramanian Swami discusses the kinds of practices are being made in India in democracy and market reforms for the past 8 years. It says that for democracy to thrive, there must be independent institutions, constitutional safeguards, embodied accountability, and electoral legitimacy. So, Subramanian Swami is pointing that the uncorrupted majority are voting for the government. However, the market is being hijacked by the corrupted minority, which is the industrialized class. The deregulations, most of the deregulations are aimed at serving the market dynamics. In Russia, post 1991, most of the deregulations have backfired, and now Russia is now in an autocratic rule. It also points out that the article also points out that newer kinds of reforms are not going to help much. For example, in 2008 and 9, US introduced certain financial products, the new financial products which backfired, and it led to the. Subramanian Swami is saying the deregulation should not stop safety nets, the social security, and affirmative action and creating a level playing. Swami is saying that market is not free for all. The market is capitalism. They are definitely the investment of capital, but there are rules of transactions. It must nurture the habit of innovation so that the productivity is increasing. The losers in democracy are the corporate houses which are the minority and hijack most of the benefits out of the results of the election. This has to stop because the safety nets means something for the poor, so creating something for the poor, that is free food during COVID times is safety net. Social security measures means creating insurance for the agricultural sector, creating welfare schemes for the senior citizens. Such kind of initiatives have to rule the democracy. So where the democracy is failing to look after the majority uncorrupted people, the democracy is kind of in a in a kind of paralysis. The next article which I am going to discuss is from the Businessline. The article is titled Perils of Prediction. It points out the kind of reality which is happening from the Indian Meteorological Department's prediction of normal monsoons. It had predicted a 103% of the long period average monsoon for India in the recent months. In April, it predicted, and by June, we have seen that most of the places in India have received some rainfall. But however, the timing of the prediction, just see the Kharif, the Rabi crop, the major Rabi crop wheat is being destroyed. Millions of tons of wheat has been destroyed. So the Indian Meteorological Department's predictions and the agricultural department's readiness for any kind of eventuality is imbalanced, so that we lost out on the Rabi crop wheat exports. This the article discusses some important terms. Long period average. What is long period average, my dear friends? It is the average rainfall prevailing in an area over 30 to 40 years. The Indian Meteorological Department predicts forecast rainfall on the basis of this long period average existing in an area. The next term which is discussed is monsoon core zone. It is a zone extending from Gujarat to Odisha, the regions under which are mainly dependent on rainfall for agriculture. Friends, the next article from the Businessline which I am going to discuss is how to scale up commodities derivative market. In this article, the writer discusses that in 2017, the market participants were made members of the National Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange. And in 2018, the derivatives market in commodities was allowed. However, the writer finds that the futures market is on commodities is not as vibrant as the derivatives market. The derivatives market also a lower commodities transaction tax was facilitated to make the derivatives market become more vibrant, but most of the measures which have been taken by the government to encourage the derivatives market on commodities has not given fruits. The article goes on to discuss what measures have to be taken in the derivatives market so that the derivatives market on commodities thrives and grows, so that it attracts. The commodities derivative market is rife with a very less appetite for hedging. The government has to revisit its laws on commodities transaction turnover tax, the commodities turnover tax. The government has also to revisit the transaction costs related to the derivatives market. Though the oil and the nickel derivatives market have been encouraged, but we have seen that both these metals have ranged in the article says that the banks must be encouraged to enter the derivatives market. The pension funds, the retirement oriented funds must enter the derivatives market on commodities.